Bailey Chongqing smiled and waved his hand. Don't get me wrong. I just want to chat with you before you leave. As he said this, Zhang Yi had already changed into the black and white combat uniform and carefully fastened the Velcro. Ask any questions you have. Bailey Chongqing's expression became serious. He frowned slightly and stared at Zhang Yi. What are your plans for this operation? The headquarters doesn't know your strength, and they arranged the operation for you as an ordinary mutant. But I know your strength is definitely not inferior to Deng Shentong. So, are you planning to take action like you did before? Strike at the critical moment, take down Eclipse Moon, and take all the credit? Zhang Yi had a playful look on his face when he heard this blunt question. Do you think I'm that kind of person? Yeah, quite a bit actually. Bailey Chongqing answered without hesitation. After all, that's how you played it back in Tianhai City. Thinking about it carefully, this has been Zhang Yi's simple yet fail-proof plan. He pretends to be weak at first, wait for the right opportunity to strike, and then reap the fruits of victory. Zhang Yi gave a knowing look. This is different, he replied. Back then, I did it to protect myself and the people around me. But this time around, I'm not very interested in the mission rewards if I'm being honest. They're simply not important to me. Bailey Chongqing loosened his arms and stared at Zhang Yi, a bit surprised. Then I want to know, why are you willing to go on this mission? Zhang Yi smiled and replied convincingly. No reason. It's just because I'm a patriot, that's it. After saying this, Bailey Chongqing looked at Zhang Yi with respect. So that's how it is. I'm so sorry. I originally thought you had other purposes. Zhang Yi smiled and replied calmly. Well, that might be the case with our first encounter. If people don't have a sense of collective honor, how can the eggs in the nest remain intact? Zhang Yi continued, his expression suddenly becoming extremely serious. This time, with the Celestial Squad as the main force, I won't be forced to expose my true strength. I will only take action when necessary, so you can rest assured. However, he raised a finger to emphasize his next words. I hope you can keep it a secret for me for the time being. Bailey Chongqing rubbed his neck slightly and sighed nervously. As the captain of an investigation team of Blizzard City, concealing important information made him feel uneasy. But this was a secret between the two, and he must keep it well hidden. He also vaguely understood that this secret could not be concealed forever. So, when that time comes, how should he face Zhu Zheng? This question sometimes gives him a headache. Sure enough, human greed was a terrible thing, which will leave you with endless troubles. For now, he can only take one step at a time. I understand, so don't worry, he replied. Zhang Yi smiled even more. He believes Bailey Chongqing won't let him down. As Bailey Chongqing turned to leave the locker room, he motioned for Zhang Yi to follow. Let's go. I have to take you guys to the airport in the early morning. Airport? Zhang Yi was incredulous, so he asked curiously, in this temperature, is it still possible to fly to Jiangning City? Bailey Chongqing smiled faintly as he tried to explain. Military aircrafts are different from civilian aircrafts. There are several extremely cold-resistant fighters in the region. They are the models we introduced from the technology of Fremons in the north. Although they cannot be used for a long time, they are perfectly fine for short distances. Also, speed is the essence of war, so it's too slow to take a special train. Besides, Jiangning City has been invaded. There is a possibility of being discovered by taking a special train. Anyway, about Fremons, it's a northern country, so most of its territory is in the cold zone. Therefore, their technology in the field of cold resistance was very advanced. Back to Zhang Yi. Upon hearing this, nodded slightly and replied with a stunned look. Oh, I see. Anyhow, a while later, just after midnight, Bailey Chongqing led the 13 outer city troops from the combat center to the airport. Inside the interior of the airport was a huge dome-like space, and more than a dozen huge bombers, fighters, and armed helicopters. As the three teams headed inside the armed helicopters, almost everyone carried a large tactical backpack. With the convenience of an alternate space, Chun Xiaoxiao looked at Zhang Yi expectantly. However, after a moment of hesitation, she decided to carry her weapons herself. After all, she did not fully admit that Zhang Yi was her captain. When necessary, she and Peng Li could choose to leave Zhang Yi and act on their own. Zhang Yi and his team walked into the helicopter without saying much. The interior space of this combat helicopter was not small. It is spacious enough to accommodate more than a dozen of them. The rest did not delay and followed suit. However, Zhuo Feiyu, who was more cautious and meticulous, asked Bailey Chongqing with evident worry, "Can we ensure that we will not be hit in the air? At thousands of meters high, even the most powerful enhanced mutant would be smashed into mud." Bailey Chongqing laughed slightly when he heard Zhuo Feiyu's question. But before Bailey Chongqing could speak, the veteran Yu Zhengyang from Sichuan City explained, Don't underestimate the defense of the armed helicopter. This is one of the most elite armed fighters in the country. In addition to the factor of the flight altitude, I can't think of any mutant who can shoot it down. Shuafeiyu replied calmly that it was better to be safe than sorry. Being an ordinary office worker before the end of the world, it was his first time riding an armed helicopter. Then at least tell us where the parachute bag is, Yuan Hao asked weakly. So in case of any problem, we can still parachute. Bailey Chongqing seriously warned everyone when he heard Yuan Hao's suggestion. Don't even think about it. In this temperature, non-professionals like you are basically flirting with death by parachuting. You will freeze into popsicles before you even land. But if you still don't give a flying fuck, then there is a parachute bag right behind the seat. Yuan Hao found a camouflage backpack when the pair found their seats. Then, he quickly suggested for Xia Lingling to use it when there's ever the need. Xia Lingling frowned slightly and stated that Yuan Hao is too timid. And such a crow mouth. Can't you say something nice? Yuan Hao simply replied that he was just worried that something will happen to her. Zhang Yi looked at the two of them as if he were watching a show. What a lively couple. He turned his head and looked out the window accidentally, and just saw a few familiar faces appearing next to another helicopter not far away. The long golden hair fell softly along the back, and the slender and fit figure left no room for any doubt that this person was captain of the celestial team, Deng Shintong, the son of the Deng family in Blizzard City. At this time, Deng Shintong led the 9 members of the celestial team to an armed helicopter. As they talked and laughed together, their actions were in stark contrast to Zhang Yi and the others. At this moment, a messy-haired team member casually stated, "Let's finish the task early today. I'm waiting to come back to have dinner with my wife." Liao Honglei laughed. "It's not even 1 o'clock. Your wife probably won't wake up when you come back." Deng Shintong had a calm smile on his face. "Don't act carelessly. Our opponent this time around is quite strong, so be careful." "Okay, Captain." The team members agreed with a smile. But at this very moment, a black extended car stopped next to the helicopter. A bodyguard came over and opened the door. An old man in a black tang suit walked down from it. It was the head of the Deng family, Deng Yuanbua, one of the giants in Blizzard City. Seeing Deng Yuanbua, Deng Shintong also hurried over. "Uncle, why are you here in person?" Deng Yuanbua looked up at his most respected nephew and replied with a smile. "This mission is very important to you and our Deng family, so I came here to tell you a few words." Deng Shintong smiled and said, "Uncle, don't worry. I am confident that I can eliminate this group of bandits within 3 hours." Deng Yuanbua sighed. "You can't always be like this, so please listen carefully." "Okay, uncle. Please tell me what you have to say. I will definitely remember it." Deng Shintong's expression couldn't help but become serious. Deng Yuanbua smiled, but his tone became low. "Don't underestimate those Japanese ronin. You haven't dealt with them on the battlefield in the past, so you don't know how crazy those people are. They are perverts who can sacrifice their lives for their so-called beliefs. Although I hate those people, I have to admit that they are terrible. So you have to be extremely careful in this battle." Deng Yuanbua placed a hand on his nephew's shoulder. His slender pupils burst into a wild light. "As long as you successfully annihilate the Eclipse group in this battle, your reputation will spread throughout the entire Jiangnan region, and even the world. Our Deng family will have more room for operation." Deng Shintong's face was still full of confidence, and his eyes became much more resolute. He nodded slightly and confidently replied, "Uncle, please rest assured, I will definitely win this battle beautifully." Deng Yuanbua smiled and nodded with satisfaction. "That's good. I will be waiting for the news of your victory here." After the two said their goodbyes, Deng Shintong turned and walked towards the armed helicopter. And as if he had a knowing feeling, he suddenly looked at the other helicopter in the distance and saw Zhang Yi leaning against the window, staring back at him. Then the two just took a moment staring and smiling at each other wordlessly. The noticeable smile from Zhang Yi was a light one, while Deng Shintong's smile was as bright as the sun. As Zhang Yi stroked Flower's soft fur, he had no complicated thought in his heart. After all, the affairs of the young master of the Deng family had nothing to do with him. All he had to do now was to protect Flower and Liang Yu and kill the members of the Eclipse group. "What are you thinking about?" Liang Yu's cold voice sounded in Zhang Yi's ears. "Nothing. I just wondered how strong Feng Guangyu and Jin is." Zhang Yi was telling the truth. After seeing some of the images of Dagong Yanjin and others, he had a basic judgment of the strength of Eclipse Moon. The strength of such an organization is between that of the investigation team. However, the strongest person always determines the upper limit of the organization. Zhang Yi couldn't help feeling that that guy must be extremely dangerous. He even thought that the operation would not be considered a success if Feng Guangyu and Jin could not be killed in this mission. Chun Xiaoxiao and Peng Li on the side heard this. But Chen Xiaoxiao's expression showed that she did not agree. Let the God Squad handle that kind of thing. Peng Li shook her index finger, looking like an experienced person, and instructed Zhang Yi. The most important thing for everyone is to know their own abilities. Even if we, the mutants from the outer city, can dominate our respective territories, we are ultimately no match for the regular army. But this also has its advantages. The greater the ability, the greater the responsibility. We just need to help the God Squad lure the enemy and delay time. Zhang Yi's smile became even stronger. He agreed with the pair. Well, you are right. I think so too. Anyway, as the scene shifted to the combat command center, Commander Zhu Zhang stood in front of the big screen, monitoring everything with a stern look. The surveillance equipment carried by everyone recorded the scene in front of him, and he had a full view of everything. Now, let's set off to Jiangning City. Zhu Zhang gave an order, and the two armed helicopters rose up with a slight boom. The huge fan blades rolled up the cold wind, and the airport ceiling spread out like wings to both sides. The two armed helicopters left one after the other and flew towards Jiangning City. Zhu Zhang glanced at the time and ordered, "You can also take action there too." Meanwhile, in Jiangning City, it was past midnight, early in the morning. At this time, all the members of the Eclipse group had not gone to bed, but just clearing some loose ends. At this moment, in an unspecified warehouse, the shrine maiden Takeuchi Mayumi lets out a light exclamation. Then she slowly raised her head and looked up at the ceiling, like she was looking up into the sky. "Fengguangyu Wenjin," she called out. "There is danger coming." The laziness on Fengguangyu Wenjin's face suddenly converged as he also did the same. "A crisis from heaven, right?" Fengguangyu Wenjin laughed teasingly. "Ah, I get it. Those guys in the Jiangnan region must be unwilling to give up and are going to attack us again," Jinguji Saikairo said with a calm yet impatient look. "I knew those guys won't let us go. This is really troublesome. We won't be killed this time, right?" "Of course not." Fengguangyu Wenjin smiled confidently, with a smile that was a little crazy and cruel. "They are the ones who will die." The armed helicopter flew across the night sky, and its hard shell froze into a layer of frost in the cold night, but it did not affect its fast flight. However, in this environment, its endurance was greatly challenged, and it was probably only suitable for this kind of short-distance flight. 10 minutes later, Zhang Yi and his team flew all the way from Blizzard City to Jiangning City. Just as they arrived above Jiangning City, through the ice flowers on the window, they could vaguely see the warm yellow light being lit up on the ground. "Huh? What is that? Bonfire party?" Zhang Yi leaned over. At the same time, there was a faint rumbling sound below. Everyone heard this thunder-like movement and couldn't help but get close to the window to watch. When they looked carefully, they couldn't help but be shocked. A vast sea of fire. Jiangning Square, the area in the center of Jiangning City, has now turned into a huge sea of fire. From time to time, there will be violent explosions coming from the ground, and the sound reaches the sky, as loud as thunder. "What's going on?" Zhang Yi frowned, a little surprised. At this moment, Zhu Zheng's voice sounded in the communication equipment at the right time. "Did you all see the explosion in Jiangning City? Don't be surprised. This is the first step of our plan. First, use the Zonglong 5 bomber to bomb the entire Jiangning Square. After this round of bombing, there will be no hiding place in Jiangning Square. Even if we can't eliminate a few Eclipse Moon members, at least we can force them out." Zhang Yi immediately thought of the bombers he saw in the airport, and he understood. Eclipse Moon has special instruments and equipment that can block satellite monitoring signals within 5 kilometers. But it seems Blizzard City also has means to blow up the entire Jiangning Square. Sure enough, all troubles come from insufficient firepower. And Blizzard City was not lacking in this sort of ammunition. Actually, if it weren't for the difficulty in transportation, Zhu Zhang would probably have people pull hundreds of this artillery and directly flatten the entire Jiangning Square. Yu Zhengyang watched the explosion flames below and stated excitedly, "Now it will be much easier for us to move around. If we are lucky, we can blow them all to death." Zhuo Feiyu on the side reminded calmly, "Don't hold out too much hope for this kind of thing. If those guys were so easy to kill, we wouldn't have to prepare for so long before coming here." Yu Zhengyang took a deep breath. His earlier excitement was completely gone. "I know. You don't need to remind me about this matter." As Peng Li briefly stared at Zhang Yi, who couldn't stop watching the chaos below from the window, she asked curiously, "This kind of large-scale fire, unless the other party is very familiar with the terrain and finds an underground shelter. Otherwise, it will be difficult to survive, right?" Zhang Yi did not answer the question directly, so he asked back, "Have you heard of napalm?" "Huh? What is that?" Peng Li blinked her big eyes a few times. Obviously, she had never heard of such a thing. Zhang Yi pointed at the sea of fire below. To put it simply, that's an incendiary bombing. And incendiary bombs have no destructive power, but they can cause large-scale burning. Since the headquarters cannot really use real bombs to bomb the entire area within a radius of 5 kilometers, they result in using napalm bombs in large quantities. This is to consume oxygen and destroy food and other resources in Jing Square, which will eventually force the Eclipse group to come out and fight us. Anyway, I don't believe that those guys will be easily burned to death by the fire, especially in this kind of weather. Peng Li blinked doubtfully, and then cast her eyes on Chen Xiaoxiao. Chen Xiaoxiao stared back at her and nodded slightly. He's right, but it will be much easier for us to find the enemy. At least we won't be ambushed by the other party in advance and fall into the troublesome situation of street fighting. As they were talking, the armed helicopter had already stopped 10 kilometers away from Jing Square. Since the ability of the other party was unknown, they naturally had to keep a certain distance before landing. And also to avoid being smashed into pieces on the ground. After the landing, a drone flew over Jing Square. A spherical device protruded from the bottom of the drone, emitting a faint blue light. Then, an invisible radio wave instantly swept across the entire Jing Square. At the Combat Command Center, a staff member reported to Zhu Zhang and Tu Yunlai. The communication blockade of the Jing Square area has been completed. They can't use communication equipment to contact each other, let alone ask for help from the outside world. Zhu Zhang nodded. Very good. Let them become headless flies first, and then crush them one by one. First, let the other party lose the means of communication, while the communicator in the Jiangnan region is not affected, so that this battle can take the initiative from the beginning. After the helicopter landed, the headsets of several captains sounded from the headquarters. Team Zhang Yi, enter the square area from the southeast. Team Wu Shifeng, enter the square area from the west. Team Zhuofeiyu, enter the square area from the north. Remember, your mission is to attract firepower and delay the people of Eclipse Moon. If an encounter occurs, the first priority is to protect your own safety, not to take the initiative to attack. The 3 captains replied affirmatively. Got it, Commander. On Zhang Yi's side, he immediately took out 2 silver-white pistols from his alternate space. These were the white owls made for him by Liu Karen, which could hold 20 rounds of holy silver bullets. The team had already stepped out of the helicopter. Zhang Yi's tactical headset had instructions about the location and path to enter Jing Square, marked by the headquarters, so he doesn't have to worry about getting lost here. At the same time, he can also check the routes of the other 2 teams clearly. The 3 teams are marching in a triangular route. Through a 3-point positioning method, the location of the other party can be confirmed. After all, within a radius of 5 kilometers, the detection effect of the satellite is blocked by the other party's technical means. So below, the location of the other party's general can only be found through manual methods and calculations. And after surveying the perimeter, Zhang Yi said to Liang Yu and the others, "Let's go." Liang Yu followed Zhang Yi without hesitation while Chen Xiaoxiao just observed the scene expressionlessly. Peng Li and Chen Xiaoxiao looked at each other seconds after. They were also very nervous at this time, but this nervousness was also accompanied by a feeling of excitement. Danger and benefits coexist. As long as they can successfully complete this mission, the gains will also be huge. Chen Xiaoxiao nodded slightly. Then the 2 followed Zhang Yi with their tactical backpack on Chen Xiaoxiao's back. As the 3 teams set off one after another, not far away, another armed helicopter slowly landed. In it were the members of the Celestial Team. Seeing the 3 outer city teams heading towards Jing Square, Deng Shuntong had a playful smile on his face. You see, there was a high probability that none of the teams will not come back after this trip. However, if they can hold on until support arrives, then it proves that they are indeed promising talents. At the very least, Blizzard City can recruit them to join the Yenyun troops. Also, it was not impossible for those who perform outstanding to join the investigation team. Deng Shintong thought of the latter and Zhang Yi naturally came to mind. Ever since they met in Blizzard City, Deng Shintong had admired Zhang Yi very much and had always wanted to recruit him into the God team. Let me see how you can perform this time. The Celestial Team were calmly waiting for the headquarters to issue the order for them to attack. Meanwhile, as the scene shifted to Zhang Yi's side, after he and his team got off the helicopter, there hadn't been any orders from the headquarters. Zhang Yi understood that the next order would probably be just waiting until the members of the Eclipse group appeared. The sea of fire in front of him had gradually died down, since the power of the napalm bomb could not last too long, and the ultra-low temperature of -60 to 70 degrees at midnight was enough to make the flames disappear quickly. However, no one knew the location of the members of the Eclipse group at this time. I hope I won't be too unlucky and meet their main members. If that's the case, I can only choose to retreat a distance first. Zhang Yi murmured. He couldn't fight the entire Eclipse group alone. After Zhang Yi and his team arrived at the designated location, they had to make decisions according to their own will. Zhang Yi did not rush forward, but stood cautiously in place, observing all the scenes in front of him. Jing Square had been burned into a dilapidated ruin at this time, and gray-black smoke rose into the sky. Zhang Yi suddenly asked Flower on his shoulder if she can smell the breath of any living person apart from them. Flower's eyes sharply swept across the ruins in front of them. Then it sniffed and finally shook its head helplessly. Zhang Yi sighed and asked if Flower was finding it difficult due to the fire. And to this, Flower agreed with a soft sound. After the fire, the smell became complicated and it was difficult to distinguish the breath of living people from it. Chun Xiaoxiao and Peng Li came over. Captain, what should we do next? Zhang Yi thought for a moment and made his own choice. We just need to wait here for them to come. Chun Xiaoxiao and Peng Li were both speechless. After all, it wasn't appropriate to just wait. They wondered if they were there to encircle and suppress the Eclipse group, instead of Eclipse group encircling and suppressing them.